Applause for him.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, we are going to cover a lot of different things, right? We actually are going to talk about AI. How could we not with Ryan here with us? Also influencers. We're going to talk about brand partnerships. We're going to talk about QSR and scalability. So get your notebooks out and buckle up. I'm Brittany, Batchelor. Our VP of Sales at Kargo. We're a mobile SSP. What is that? It's rich media creative across all devices. It's been great to partner with some of you, and I'm going to pass it to everyone to introduce yourself.
I'm going to start. Hi, I'm Justin Soffer. I'm the CMO of Tiff's Treats, which is a warm cookie delivery service headquartered in Austin, but in 168, 170 locations around the U.S.
Hi, I'm Mjones, and I'm here with Torchy's Tacos today. I recently left. I'm looking for new opportunities and having exciting conversations. So excited to share some wisdom with you all.
Hey, I'm Kelsey Greer. I'm with PepsiCo Foods, so Quaker and Frito-Lay together. I don't really touch beverages, so don't ask me about that. And Brittany, it was so sweet and got you one of my favorite products. It's the Simply Cheetos, no artificial colors or flavors. So grab a bag on your way out.
Hi, my name is Ryan Bars. I lead our influencer marketing at IBM. So we make different types of chips. Ours are AI, not Frito-Lay chips. Yeah, you like that? I've been thinking about that for a minute.
I forgot to mention
I'm glad I went after you.
But yeah, we had a lot of fun connecting before this. And Kelsey, I do want to direct the first question to you, right? Kelsey is working on the big movie promotions and integrating your brand. So Frito has made memorable appearances in movies and pop culture. One, if you're from Texas or Oklahoma, you know about Twisters. And how do you decide which entertainment partnerships align best with which brand?
Yeah, great question. I realized I didn't tell you my title. So I'm Senior Director leading all entertainment and culture partnerships across those brands for Frito-Lay and Quaker. And it's kind of a new team. It's been the last year, and our first one we did was with Fritos, the original corn chip, and Twisters, the movie. And honestly, when we're deciding which properties make sense, it's a little bit of data and gut. So with that movie specifically, we had great consumer and audience overlap with the Fritos demographic and the movie fandom. We knew it was a legacy IP, so that it was going to be a hit. You also have Glenn Powell, who is so hot right now. I feel like anything he touches turns to gold. But then you do have that gut feeling. And the tagline of the movie was, if you feel it, chase it. And so we kind of had an inside joke internally, if you feel it, taste it. And we just had this feeling that it was going to be a success. And then it unlocked an idea that was what we talk about internally in marketing as a mental shortcut, right? It's a very easy get. And you have Fritos Twists, which are shaped like a twister. You have Twisters, the movie. It was a really fun overlap, but it was an instant get. And then for the weather nerds, we had a little bit of an extra mile where, if you know how a tornado comes about, it's hot air and cold air. So we put, for the first time ever, flamin' hot twists in the same bag as ranch twists. And we made this really cool tornado for your taste buds. And what's great about this is that it was kind of the perfect storm where it was a very low lift budget-wise, but we got nearly 1 billion impressions. And so when you find that authentic fit, that perfect property that matches with your product, you can really make some waves.
That's amazing. Also, people do chase Twisters. Being an OU grad, right? That is actually a thing. So definitely the movie blew up. It was great to see. Ryan, you were talking a little bit about how IBM is actually integrated into South by Southwest in the conference, and you run the influencer portion. Will you talk a little bit about your activation?
Yeah, so IBM is sponsoring the AI track this year, and last year was the first year that South by launched that track. IBM was the lead sponsor then and again this year. So we've got in the Hilton an activation where South by Southwesters can go and kind of play ping pong and foosball, which is all integrated with our AI technology. The ping pong table is kind of related to our US Open activation, where It's a fan experience, so it's taking some of your data from your playing and shoots out a AI commentary on how you played against your opponent. So it keeps score, it does your speed, ball speed, and everything. And then foosball is new this year with a partnership with Sevilla FC football club out of Spain, and that's for recruitment. So they're using a lot of data to help inform their decisions on player recruitment. And we have a similar AI experience there over at the Hilton. So go check it out if you haven't. And then we've got some great speakers today and tomorrow. Arvind Krishna, CEO and chairman, speaking tomorrow.
Cool. So PepsiCo, Frito-Lay brand, which you mentioned, and IBM, you guys obviously are looking for big, splashy, scalable opportunities. And so partnerships like Twister, are a little bit easier to do. Kara and Justin, can you all talk about some ways that you're integrating your brands with what the trends that are happening today?
So we do a lot of things that piggyback off of news stories that are sort of happening on a local level, also, more national. We work with a lot of sports stars, like college stars, NIL deals. So we do that as well, mostly on a local level because we're working in most of the major markets in Texas, Georgia, Tennessee. So we have like a lot of kind of local NIL deals in all these places with sports stars and sports teams for a lot of the colleges. Influencers, content creators, the same deal, although working towards a world in which we're very authentic with them and that they actually have experienced tasting the product, gifting it, knowing what it actually feels like to give it to someone and experience that. Authenticity is a big challenge for partnerships and influencer marketing, where you get someone who is given a box of cookies and they're saying, oh, these are the most amazing cookies I've ever had, but it doesn't really mean anything unless they actually say it with authenticity. So we struggle with that quite a bit, especially in sort of the use case of this, which is like a gifting product. So that's our focus. I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point because I hear that a lot from brands. So before Torchy's and leading digital marketing, I was at Meta for nearly a decade. So I spent most of my career in the tech space. And that was one of the most common things we heard from brands across the board was those challenges. And everybody talks about authenticity, but they're like, what does that actually mean when you dig into it? And noticing this at Torchy's and really starting from the ground floor for marketing as a whole, the biggest thing that I had my takeaway on, which I think a lot of people will probably agree with, is starting with a better brief from the beginning internally. If your internal teams from top down are not aligned on what you want to see and how you want to scale that, it's going to fail. That authenticity doesn't mean anything if nobody knows what you're actually trying to do. On the Torchy's side, one of our bigger partnerships this last year was with the Kansas City Chiefs. And that really started off with how are we going to position this when it's outside of Texas? We're growing in that space. What does it actually look like? And the brief from that was we wanted to be the team's number one taco. That was the goal. So starting off really simply with that goal, but then actually finding players that went to like UT, for example, that already had that love of Torchy's tacos on the team really helped to bring that to life and make that much more of a real thing rather than just, a championship team. So that's really how we approached it, was drilling down on that brief. That was something that I hounded for my team and partners quite a bit, was the brief.
Can I just add one sort of onto the brief piece? One thing I've asked my teams to do is literally, instead of writing on a piece of paper, do a brief where you're actually videoing yourself and talking as if you're the influencer or content creator. It's the most kind of humbling and embarrassing thing to do, and hoping that it doesn't make it out into the world, especially in my case. But a 60-second, the CMO speaking like as if he or she is in the shoes of the content creator, and using that instead of just a handwritten or Google Doc is so much more powerful, because a lot of times you're really able to convey what you're trying to get across to the content creator, and otherwise too much is lost in translation. A lot of times they read the brief or they don't read it, and then they miss the kind of the point or the authenticity of it.
Man, I'd like to be on the receiving end of that ask. I do know there's a few B2B folks out in the audience. And so passing this to Ryan, influencers for B2B, can you describe what that looks like and kind of how you go about finding those influencers?
Yeah, it's different than your consumer brands when maybe you might be able to make a purchasing decision with a couple clicks of your thumb. So we have longer cycles, and we play a lot in LinkedIn, which is naturally a hard platform to get data from. And so we have to rely a lot on agency support to help find topical alignment and topical authority. So with us, it's all about thought leadership, and to authenticity. I really lean into people that can like sit in a room with some of our experts from IBM and sort of riff off the technology and truly understand it. It's not going to go very far if someone's just kind of doing a product promotion or a launch promotion. They really have to sort of understand the technology at some level. So it's really important for us to lean into that. And then we have different audiences too. Sometimes we're talking to the C-level folks that are making IT decisions at really large companies, all the way down to developers that are putting fingers on keyboards, and everything in between. So those are different platform strategies for sure. But we've seen where if we're talking to developers, them actually coding with our technology and creating demos or tutorials has really been helpful in kind of breaking through some of the competitive noise.
Are there particular trends in the B2B space that you're seeing?
I think it kind of depends on the platform. Short form video, which is, you can't do a demo on that in 90 seconds or less, but my example back to the US Open or other sports partnerships we do have explainer style content that I think does really well with kind of the awareness of IBM in the space, which is really important for us to just be relevant in what AI is doing for businesses. But then other trends that we see is like we need to kind of get beyond the traditional platforms you might think of, LinkedIn or Instagram, and how do we get on Reddit? How do we get into these communities where there's conversations, not as a brand, of course, but how do we find our experts from IBM to show up really smart in those spaces? And then also, how do we recruit advocates for the brand to kind of help tell our story or answer questions and just be engaged?
So we all talked a little bit about AI when we sunk up before this. How are each of your brands utilizing AI in your media mix? Justin?
I'm not going to answer this. AI is just, you guys are the experts in it.
You got it.
I think for our side, it's really around the partnerships piece of it. And AI can really be used to help with dynamic collaboration from a data standpoint. So for me personally, I'm neurodivergent. Hence, I have a cell phone on me for bullet points and things like that when I get lost. For me, specifically, this really helps take a lot of different resources to distill down really quickly to be able to tell that story. So when we're looking for different brand partnerships, for example, we can actually put it in their terms and why it benefits them, and then why it's also mutually beneficial to partner together, which I think is so important. This used to be really hard, especially on the research side. It's something that's not really built into a lot of marketing plans and budgets especially. So I think this helps people move faster and more accurate, obviously with checking in background of all that as well. But to us, that's been a really big piece of how to get that out faster.
I think also something interesting is AI does have generative personalities. You can actually build yourself into an AI platform. Is that on the roadmap in terms of testing those personalities out? It certainly saves you some money, but this whole conference we've been talking about human-to-human interaction. And so I was curious where brands are drawing the line on that.
It's an interesting topic, and it's something that we talk about a lot. AI and like these AI-generated influencers aren't new. Like Little Michaela was something that was 5-6 years ago. I think that there's appropriate use cases of AI when it comes to even just like discovering influencers, brand safety, generating like brainstorming ideas and content ideas. And we have conversations with our creators like during that briefing process of like how they should leverage ChatGPT or other sort of generative AI platforms. And it's great to kind of start the brainstorming and creative spot, but don't put our client information in there. Don't put other proprietary stuff in the platform. So we have those conversations, but people are nervous that AI is going to take over people's jobs. I think it's a little bit more about how to be more productive and doing the things that really bring you joy as a creator or even as a marketer, to streamline some of the work that maybe feels a little mundane or repetitive, and let AI kind of handle that so that you can be more impactful with the creative side or whatever your passions are. I don't necessarily see AI taking over all of our creator partnerships. I think we do need that human authenticity, and consumers really kind of see through it. Like they can tell if, and you can see on all these platforms now, right? Generated with AI or like impacted with AI. So there's gonna be more disclosures. I think that's gonna be slower to get there, but eventually we're gonna have to be talking about this was an AI generated whatever, and consumers are gonna kind of see through that. I don't think they'd be as engaged.
I know people might, right? We're going to stop using the word AI. We're going to switch it over to brand partnerships, right? It is being talked about on every panel. I am glad we hit on it, but Kelsey, want to get to you in terms of brand partnerships. You mentioned the Twisters partnership, but are there any other partnerships on the horizon that you're excited about?
None that I can talk about today. No, we have a couple great partnerships coming up in the next year or so. They haven't been announced, so I can't tell you about them today. But I think that as we think about brand partnerships and understanding where the brands across all of Frito-Lay and Quaker, we have 36 different brands. And so knowing the right IP and the right property and the right type of partnerships that match the brand, the consumer, the brand goals and objectives is really important. And then how do we look at it as a portfolio as well? So if we're doing these larger properties that we do have some coming up, how do we build a use case, not just for a Doritos, but for Doritos, Lay's, Cheetos, Tostitos, Fritos? How do they all work together as this powerhouse for these much larger properties? And we can do a lot more from a partnership standpoint that way, with entertainment specifically.
And each brand does have a really unique audience. They definitely have overlap. How are you picking your partnerships by brand to still stay authentic?
I think the word authenticity gets thrown around a lot. I feel like even what we just talked about up here, we have an agency that helps us from a product placement standpoint and making sure the brand makes sense from a scene, a property, and they're very strategic with that. But as we look at brand partnerships and properties, I think having your brand live authentically in that world and being comfortable with, we have a showrunner that's taking our brand and is actually changing it. And as a marketer, that is terrifying to say, oh, here, take my bag of Doritos and make it fit in this world. But you have to do that to live authentically in a property and to feel like you're consistently part of the culture, of the entertainment, of the sport that you're partnering with. Otherwise, it feels kind of like a forced fit, and it might not make a ton of sense and resonate with the audience.
And then just from a general integrating your brand with partnerships, Justin, I'll pass it to you. Any advice for the audience and the best ways of doing that?
I think just creativity. I mean, just being really, smart and thoughtful when you're thinking of things, and consumers are smart. So you want to do things that are really unique, and there's so much noise out there in the world that you really need to obviously do things that are going to get attention. So, that's what I'd primarily say.
Kara, do you have an answer to that?
Sure. I like to think about it in terms of different challenges. When starting a new brand, for example, in Facebook, one of my goals was the head and the heart argument. So for me, telling different pieces of business that it's not really possible at this point in time, this was in 2016, to put your brand out there globally from a digital aspect, meaning sales. So the head argument at the time was, this is a $13 trillion opportunity that no one is touching well at scale globally. The heart argument for me was knowing that when you give women economic power, they give back to their communities at 50% the rate of men. So if you can give somebody that opportunity to uplift not just themselves and their families, but their communities, why wouldn't you do that? You have the scale and the technology to build that. Let's go after it. So a big piece of that was thinking about those challenges when it comes to building something globally, thinking about cultural nuances. Sure, you can research that all you want, but really what it takes is boots on the ground, feeding that information back up. So thinking about a bottom to top strategy for that piece of it. The next part of that is really the infrastructure around this. A lot of companies that are inherently global, like gaming, travel industries, are doing this in some way, shape, or form, right? But they're not necessarily knowing exactly how to reach new people in new countries. So taking that heavy lift out of it and building it into the product helps tremendously, especially when it comes to automatic translations of your ads. These were things that didn't exist, that had to be built from the ground up. So using that head and heart argument to those challenges and knowing who you're pitching to was a key piece of that. And that really transformed an entire group that we started building in London, is now a global team. It started out from 0 revenue to 36 billion in 2 years. So when you can really nail that pitch of how do you tackle these challenges that nobody else is willing to do, that's a good place to start.
Cool. I know, right, in marketing, everyone has, like, we human to human interaction, be creative. How are you all making sure that that big idea does get pushed through your organization and that the CFO and CEOs are actually buying off on the idea? How is that measured for you all?
Good. I mean, in our case, we would just throw a bunch of stuff out there and see what's working, right? So it's not just one big idea. It's like thousands of ideas, and then you eventually find 1 or 2 that are good and that work, and then you double down on. So, I mean, we aren't really the ones to judge always. It's typically the consumer who's going to judge what the good idea is. I mean, for influencers in particular, we actually don't choose just like 1 or 2 or 3 or 5. We work with thousands and hope that we'll get a couple good pieces of content. Do you know in the US, supposedly now, 12 million people earn their primary income as being an influencer? 12 million people. So there's a lot of people to choose from to go out and basically get content from. And I looked it up this morning. There are 4 million nurses in the US. So there's almost 3 times as many social media influencers in the US as are nurses. So again, we are just trying to get as much content as we possibly can, and then take the best content, amplify it, do it again and again and again. And that's really, it's not going to come from the boardroom. It's going to come from all this content creation out in the world.
I think for us, it's data first. So we have to showcase, and we have to internally have to make sure we're telling the story of, like, influencer marketing content creation is around awareness and top of funnel. Very rarely are we going to be driving sales from an influencer post on LinkedIn or Instagram with B2B. So if we can kind of set the stage there internally and showcase some of the impact we've had over the years with driving awareness, brand lift, and get a few internal champions of that, then we can kind of bring it up to senior leadership for more funding or more budget. So for us, that's really been kind of get the grassroots effort and make sure that we're all and we're integrated. We're not just over in a silo doing influencer marketing by ourselves. We are talking with the paid social team. We're talking with the content team, the digital team, all the teams, events. How do we show up and make sure that when someone does produce something with us as a creator, that it's got as much legs as it can and get integrated into the campaigns so that it is getting more visibility from senior leadership.
Nice.
I think a piece of that too that you're hinting at is like the measurability of it. And that's something you get questions about a lot. And my response, like, if you can't measure it, why? And have you ever tried before? I kind of think about it as anytime someone tells me no, I get a little shit grin on my face that says, tell me more about why not. So I definitely like to challenge. And I think a piece of that is the measurability. And that's something I've done at a lot of companies, is setting up what that actually looks like so that you can be consistent in that measurement and go back to those arguments to say, this is why you need to double my budget for next year. And some of those are things, that we're all familiar with, like surveys, brand residence, those kinds of things. But really thinking too, like, what does loyalty actually mean to your business? And are you measuring it in a consistent way every time? Or are you changing it constantly? Because then you're not actually measuring anything, right? Thinking about setting up how you're setting up your A/B tests to know what is popping and why it is. I think those pieces are so critical.
So we were given a pretty broad topic, right? Brand partnerships and also influencer marketing. So would love for each of you to just, if we didn't cover anything, for you to be able to cover it here, and then we'll open it up for some Q&A.
I think one thing we talked about in our prep session was outside of entertainment partnerships, what else is PepsiCo looking and where can we really grow? And I think if you know our brand, sports partnerships are a really huge part of what we do. But I think what I'm really pushing for internally is brand to brand partnerships. So as we look at co-branding, as we look at building innovation, how do we do that with our brands that are going to double our reach and resonance, get new households, drive occasion salience, which is one of our top objectives. And great example of this is Milk Bar and Cheetos. Never would have put those two things together. They were both celebrating big birthdays. And so we came together and we had a giant birthday party where we actually made a Milk Bar cake with Cheetos. We reached a whole new audience and a whole new occasion that Cheetos might not have touched otherwise. Lay's and IHOP made a pancake flavor just for Walmart. That was something that, again, you don't normally think about Lay's for breakfast. And if legal is listening, I'm not saying to eat Lay's for breakfast, but that was something that reached a whole different audience that Lay's might not have touched before. And so I think as we think, and even in this room, if you have a brand that you might not have thought made sense for Frito-Lay or Quaker, let's think about it in a different way, because I think there's a huge opportunity to grow our households when we come together with brand to brand partnerships.
I think to that point too, that is a whole demographic that needs to be unlocked, right? When we're thinking about how first party data is just so much more important in this space than it ever has been before, even for influencers to own their own data to show like, this is why you should partner with me. Same on the B2B side, like it's only going to get harder and harder to reach people that are more relevant. So why not think differently? I love that.
Have anything to add, Justin?
I think one thing I've noticed is that there are partnerships that serve sort of an optics need for a company or perception type of need, and then don't really do anything from actually a business result standpoint. So one thing to sort of be cautious of is that when you do a partnership, who are you really serving? Is it the CEO? Is it the kind of the view of the brand, or are you actually trying to acquire customers, grow the business? And sometimes those are two very different things from a partnership standpoint, two different objectives, and think about your partnerships in those two different ways. Because if it's just about making the CEO happy or the board happy, or to have this halo effect for the brand that you think over time will pay off, that's one thing. If you're really doing something that you want to drive real sales, that can look and feel very different. So think about what your objective is with partnerships.
I think for me, it's like B2B doesn't have to be boring. I think it can be exciting with our creator partnerships and influencer partnerships. And I think a challenge we have at times, at least from my experience, has been around making sure that the creator has the freeway or the free will to kind of live in their lane, whereas the brand wants to kind of control sometimes how they say things or what they want to say. And so my job is to make sure that we allow through the briefing process and just through like Q&A or moments with our experts, that they feel comfortable kind of articulating the story or the value that the technology might bring to businesses in their own kind of unique voice. And that can be hard for brand marketers at times to kind of let go of that control. But I think it's really important, especially in the B2B space where these technology can be applied in many different ways, but these individuals are selecting our experts in the space, and they're using the technology, or at least can speak to it intelligently. So it's important for us to let go a little bit of that control. And I think it's important for any brand to kind of think of that as your onboarding partnerships.
Awesome. Well, you guys have 4 very unique and different brands up here in the hot seat. So wanted to open it up to some Q&A.
Is this mic? Yes, it is. First one, right? Well, you have this, and then you have...
I mean, I'll take both of them. So my question is more about participating in culture. Do you see your brand as a mirror to culture, a megaphone for culture, and how do you make the distinct decision of how to lean in?
Got that?
I was like, yeah.
Jenna, will you repeat the question? It was pretty quick,
I know,
to be honest.
sorry, I talk fast. It's the neurodivergency up here too. I get you. I said, when you're thinking about participating in culture, do you see your brand as a megaphone for culture or a mirror to culture? And how do you make the distinction of where to lean in?
I actually love how you frame that, a mirror or a megaphone. We talk about it a lot as reactive versus proactive. And are you reacting to culture or are you creating culture? And I think it depends on the brand, at least across all of ours. You have some brands, I keep looking at Curtis, like Doritos, that can create culture. It's such a brand. It's very clear who that brand is. And so they can go out, they know their consumer and they know who they are, and they can create culture within that space. You have other brands that might not have as much historical value with consumers, and we're building it, and we're having to be more of a mirror to culture, and we're having to react to trends on social or how people are using the product or talking about the product in a reactive way, and that's not always a bad thing. And I think that's where we can start to grow and build on the momentum of what's happening in culture with those brands, while still really taking some big risks with our other brands that can be a megaphone in culture and start to create that.
This question's for Ryan. In B2B tech, there's this landscape, right? We've got analysts and a lot of boutique analyst firms. We've got customer voices. How do you look at the influencer landscape and make decisions about, do you lean in with a customer? Do you lean in with somebody who's more of a consultant, analyst, blogger type of an influencer? How do you decide?
Yeah, good question. So IBM, we've got teams for all of that, right? So we do have lines in the sand, and what we do is, tactically, we have regular touch points and understanding of like who we're targeting or working with. And now there are analysts that, I'm on the social media team. So our job is first to show up and like create social first content. An analyst, that's not necessarily their strong suit. They might have significant reach on a social platform if they're at Gartner or some other big name analyst firm. We allow some collaboration between our team internally. Of course, they don't. They have their kind of person they work with from the AR side, analyst relations side. So I think from us, it's kind of drawing the line in the sand. Who are we targeting? Those are people that have creative platforms, are active on social, et cetera. And analysts sort of have a different viewpoint, and they're sort of talking about the market. We're talking about our technology and sort of building awareness around that and that social side. So I think we set up our teams to understand what is our objective. And of course, we have like a whole client eminence and client success team that helps bring those client stories that we want to tell and they're willing to tell with us. And then we sort of match make a lot of times, say, okay, we can get some creators, some analysts, whatever, to work and tell that client story, so that we're not just talking all about IBM, but we're actually putting the client first. And I think we see a lot of success with that too.
I actually just want the cookies now. I'm joking. So, hi, I'm Pedro. I'm the question guy. My question is, you talked about something really important, which is gut feeling. And I have this theory that gut feeling is just data crunching on a organic, really fast level. And it's not like, just this fluffy inspiration. You're seeing something, but it's really hard to bring that to a negotiation table. Sometimes you have to put like your reputation online. You get like data from your track record, and trust me on this one, I know what I'm talking about. This will work. What else do you use to make those negotiations, like to get the buy-in? I think it's a double down on your question. How do you convince people that something really courageous and really out there could work without actually doing it?
That's a really great question. And, we kind of joke internally that we want to be, it's a term we called FOIC, first of its kind. Hey, do something first of its kind, but show me the data where it's going to be successful. Where has it been tried and true? And it's such a tough balance, right? And so I think that the internal storytelling is really important, and storytelling is the right word here, because yes, data is part of that, but how you tell the story, how you know your audience, right? If I'm telling a story about Lay's and IHOP to legal, that story is going to be very different than if I'm telling that story to the CMO. And so I think how you frame your story, understanding what your audience is looking for, again, knowing that audience, if you know the brand lead and you understand, hey, they have an affinity for pancakes, and this is going to be an easy sell, versus, hey, I really need to go out and need to show the household pen that IHOP has and how this is going to reach outside. It's kind of a mix of going back to data and gut that you bring it together. I actually love the idea that gut is just data crunching really fast. But I think without belaboring that, I think it really is knowing your audience and building the story tailored to that audience that is going to help really sell it in.
To add to that too, because I love the way that you framed it up, which is just trust me. That used to be my argument many years ago. And I think it was so frustrating of why people, I'm like, well, it's because they don't know you, genius. That's why. And for me, I think the best thing I ever did for my career was spend some time in sales itself and learn exactly how to do what you're saying, which is framing it up for what your audience needs to hear, whether it's on the tactical side, they want to know you've thought through it, or the vision side, they want to know where this goes in the next few years, so it's not just a one and done. So I think to that point, if you're really curious, spend some time with shadowing your sales teams. They're probably a great resource for that.
Hi there. Thank you for that. So curious if y'all have found any drawbacks on the or on any of the walled garden platforms in terms of controlling the reach or amplifying it, and if you've ever attempted to take the content you've built out with your influencers and then run that programmatically. Maybe you can target your audience better. Maybe there are better CPMs for amplification. Thanks.
Yeah. Yes, that's something that we're definitely spending more time on this year is how do we put paid dollars behind our influencer content. Again, we want to make sure it gets to the right target market. And we have an example late last year, we partnered with a dozen influencers to sort of do a 2-part series, building a project with our AI models. And my head was like, okay, this is going to be great on LinkedIn, and we're going to target the C-suite. We're going to do this on YouTube and Instagram and target the developer audience. And if we just posted it organically, it probably wouldn't have had the same amount of impact as if we did put dollars behind it. So I think it's a really important part of the strategy to make sure that we're spending all this money and time, like onboarding influencers, discovering them, paying for their time and talent. Might as well make sure the right people are seeing it. So we work really closely with our paid media team to make sure that content is getting in front of the right decision makers, if it's the C-suite or just people that might be using our technology.
I think it's probably a really smart idea to do that, to expand programmatic, to take that content and build it out further. One thing I've seen is that people consume information differently now. And so you can actually take influencer creator content, run it in CTV ads. They're not expecting like a Super Bowl style, video creative all the time for video ads, or you take a subway in New York and you see the advertising on it and it looks like it's actually an influencer piece or creator. It's not actually like a polished advertisement because it's about the authenticity of the content. So it's not just extending it programmatically, but you could take that content and extend it across any channel you can think of, video, print, etc., because consumers are sort of used to seeing that sort of style of content these days because everyone's so glued to social media.
I think with that, building on it, Tom Fishborn said the best marketing doesn't feel like marketing. And I think that's exactly what influencer can do. And to your point of seeing something in the world that doesn't feel like an ad that I'm talking at you, it feels like something I would want to see and I'm doing in my free time, like watching influencers. I think that's a really good point and strategic and smart way to leverage that content.
That's one of my favorite ways too to test content, is to test to see how it does organically, and then from there put the money behind it to see where it can go from there.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for having a little chat this morning. And you can find them after over some Bloody Marys, right?
Absolutely. We have some
All right.
cocktails waiting for you at the bar over here to the left. Let's give them all a big round of applause, please.